Pleasure to have
Hi
you here.
guys, I'm
Hey,
sorry.
hi, Panda. No
I'm
worries.
sorry guys.
Hi.
I
All right.
am extremely
Awesome,
sorry.
awesome, awesome. So yeah, let's start with the first topic. It's going to be Kashmir Files. So Saurabh, would you like to maybe take a couple of minutes, put down some context, and then me and Panda can chip in with what we have around it. So all yours.
Okay. So just we'll start off with basics. Like Kashmir Files was released this month on 11th of March, and they had a lot of build up to the movie. It was addressing a very a sort of a topic that people usually tend to stay away with due to obvious reasons that it instigates uh, not so good memories of the past. Since the release of the movie, it has been an overwhelming success by all measures, be in terms of the reputation it has garnered or the money for that matter. Um, it has also become a big debate, and clearly there are people who like its release and the people who do not. It has been a device dividing the society. There was a wedge, and this movie sort of put that wedge deeper and divided the society. And for good or the bad is really up for debate. Um, uh, so the merits and demerits could be discussed, but clearly it is a groundbreaking moment in the filmmaking history of this country. Uh,
Right.
does that sounds good?
Yeah. Saurabh has just given down the basic context, and what is so on the one hand, there is a huge tragedy which has happened. It was like some would call it a genocide, some would call it an exodus. Basically, a lot of people who grew up there were scared away, and a lot of people actually suffered deaths, rapes, kidnappings, serious crimes were committed, and there was a lot of human suffering involved, and the film sort of does a good job of showcasing that human suffering. But what is also happening on top of the human suffering is politicization of that suffering, and because of the way Indian demographic is constructed, if you are able to consolidate all of the Hindu vote, you will always get elected. So, sort of any efforts around information, distribution, which help you consolidate the majority, are what sort of gets you re-elected. So, there's a story here in all the states that have made this film tax-free. So if I just go down the list, the states are Haryana, Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, Karnataka, Goa, Tripura, UP, and Uttarakhand. Guess what is common among all the states? So I mean, there is a very clear, political message behind the movie, and some would even say that the movie has been successful in sort of delivering that political message. And as sort of people who are slightly more aware than or to be fooled by the propaganda that's going around. I think we should be a little more aware of sort of the efforts that are taking place, and there are propaganda from both sides. I'm not saying doing it is good or bad, but maybe getting affected by it is bad, and maybe that is where we need to come in as a media organization to sort of spread that awareness. But that would be my take. But I would like to hear what Saurabh has to say. But before that, let's go to Panda, and then Saurabh.
What I have to say regarding Kashmir Files is that let's just take it as a movie. Let's keep the politics part apart. Till now, the exodus of the Pandits, Kashmiri Pandits, it has been reflected, I guess, in a movie called Shikhara by Vidhu Vinod Chopra. And apart from that, all the movies that were made on Kashmir, Mission Kashmir, we had Heather, we had Rosa, Fana. So these were the sort of movies that had, the protagonist was someone who has taken up arms, has become a terrorist, owing to his own circumstances or something like that. It was something very situational or something like that. But this part of history was something that has never been explored. And it's what I basically want to say is that you are portraying a specific part. Now there is also politics going on that you could have included the whole part and the other part in this movie. But what I want to say is that this is a genre of movie that covers that specific part. There were movies that did not cover this specific part. So just let's keep it as a movie. Yeah, it is a way to reality. How distorting it is something that we still don't know, because this is what has been portrayed. But I think so. This is something that is itself a genre movie, which is very acceptable. Now politicizing this movie, and there have been going rounds of talks. The politicians, presently in news, or I would say in power, sharing these movies and something like that. So it is very well to keep it to your personal opinion, but again, making this a political agenda and then going about it is something that basically kills the fun that the media, that the movies and all this Bollywood section that it contains. So that is my view on this.
Yeah, clearly there are two sides to it. But as the general rule of thumb, the truth lies somewhere in between. And we have to start off from the vantage point of measuring the pros and cons of the release of this movie. Okay. So as you can see in the conversation, especially when the internet has come to the fore with Geo Revolution and all, people had been pointing back to, okay, well, what happened then? And then it happened with 2002, and then it happened with the Kashmiri Pandits, and then they will keep on going and dragging back. So the pros become that, okay, this has been becoming a part of conversation where a larger conversation is taking part of it, taking the center stage. The con of it is there is a division in the society. Now, people were not making the movie of this sort precisely because they always knew that this is going to be political. Always. This is going to be political. But now that it has become political, it's going to be deeply, people would be able to connect with this movie a lot. Does that mean that we should not be making this kind of movie? I do not think so. I think I'm going to put it in the pros part also. So the con is that people would politicize it. It was always known that it's going to be politicizing. But if it leads to sort of a social mobilization where it harms a person financially or physically, then it's a problem. If the information goes around in the country where it does not really harm anyone, I don't think it's a democracy, right? Mm-hmm. Information will go around. Information has gone around previously as well. Unless until my right to watch a movie and interpret it in my own way does not come in the way of other person's liberty to live, I think it's a good enough movie. And by now, no pretext has been set from this movie that a person has been physically harmed. Obviously, the chants have been made. Okay. Some of the people had gone into verbal confrontation with other members of the audience. That has already happened. Okay, that could be seen as some sort of violence, obviously. But I think it also is a part of conversation. It was not something that a person has been mishandled or a person has been lynched, since that's a buzzword in past 7 or 8 years. So in my opinion, the pros are going to, in due history, in retrospect, gonna outweigh the cons of this movie. It is also opened a very, very nasty phase of our politics. If such movies come in future, it's always going to be a positive.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I've just pulled in Saurav as well, and he also wanted to be on today's podcast, and we had sort of talked about it, and we're going to discuss another topic after this. But so even Saurav had some views around Kashmir Files. So since we were discussing that, and there are two Saurabhs today, so I don't know how to address you guys, but Saurabh Kumar Dubey. Okay, I'll take your full name. Maybe let's have your view. Thank you so much for doing this, and let's have your view on Kashmir Files.
Yeah, you guys can call me Dubey. It's okay, and that's what my friends used to call me.
All right.
See, I was listening to. First of all, hello to everyone over here, and you guys are doing a great job. And I was listening to you, all of you people, but and I have a different point of view from what has already been said on the platform, and about the movie. I think the movie is, according to me, is basically I think the director, I heard some of the conversations of Mr. Vivek Agnihotri, like he was trying to promote the movie, and he said that he's not focusing on the political part. He has gently kept himself out of the whatever the political ramifications that the movie is going to have, and he just wants to focus on the human suffering part. And I feel he is. I think the movie justifies his point of view because if you see, like the movie starts and throughout the course of like the entire 3 hours, you hardly there are only few passing references of the politics of that particular amount of time. The movie has been showing massacres, killings, or what the brutalities that the people have gone through. So for time being, like we can keep the politics part of the movie out of it. But as we all know that we live in such polarized times and people are going to have an opinion about it. So I have a reason behind it that why this is happening. Let's put it into context. See, we are a very young democracy. We are hardly like 75 years old. We have entered into 75 years of democracy. And what I believe is like there has hardly been, if you leave out last 7 to 8 years, there has hardly been a counter narrative to the popular narrative that goes on in current, like that has been going on since last 70 years, like the way the history has been written, or maybe the way we have been taught, like how we achieved our freedom and everything. Like there has been a certain point of view, or which maybe we can say the right wing point of view, which has been ignored for a very long amount of, for a very considerable amount of time, which has now come into foreground like in the past 7 to 8 years. So what I believe is like when these things happen, or like what should I say? So I think like when you undergo certain this type of churn, like in the society, I still believe that we are still a growing society. Like we have not developed like US, or like where there are so many point of views. So where there is a churn in the society, like these things are bound to happen. Like people will have like you will see like social mobilization. You will see people like being angry or like expressing their views in the ways ideally like they should not be behaving like this. Like I saw some of the videos like where people were chanting some certain slogans in the cinema hall, and like which is completely wrong. You are not allowed to like demonize any community about like that is completely wrong. Like whatever has happened in the past, we had 800 years of Mughal rule. Like there were so many things which happened which should never have happened. But that doesn't mean that you will ask like present day Muslims those questions. They are not answerable to it, right? So I think like this is a churn which is going on in the society, and the way forward is that like which I believe that we should allow such churns to keep happening. We should not be stopping it. I believe that there like there is a sinusoidal where there like something goes up and it comes down, like the sine curve. Like it sometimes goes up and it comes down. So this progression is very natural, and this was bound to happen if the dispensation changes. We just need to focus on the fact that that people should not take law and order into their hands. They should not be like going crazy or and allow these things to keep happening unless we have multiple points of views. These things are never going to settle down. And Kashmir is still the same. The movie just focuses on one point of view. It shows the pain that people have gone through it, and we should just end it over there itself. Like Panda said, like we should just treat it as a movie. We should not go beyond it. But we should also understand the fact that why is this happening? This is happening because somewhere I feel like down 70 years, like after independence, there hasn't been enough churn in our society. We haven't allowed enough point of views to propagate. Obviously, because we had a Congress rule which had a particular narrative, and it allowed that narrative to propagate, even through art, cinema, and everything. Like he also gave the examples of so many multiple movies which just focused on what should I say? Like they showed why people picked up arms to fight against the state. So I feel that due to lack of like the fight between the multiple narratives, which has been lacking in our history, in the field of art or even intelligentsia, which has not happened, which is actually happening now. So these things are happening. So I think we should just learn to live with all these things rather than like saying like why this is happening or this should not be happening. We should learn to live with it. That is my point of view in all this thing.
All right, yeah. So I mean a lot of things mentioned by Dubey there. So I mean the key point that I wanted to double click on was that this is the first time that the counter narrative thing is happening. So exactly. Ever since 2014, what has happened is that the Overton window of the Indian political discourse has shifted to the right a little bit.
We had a BJP government for 5 years, like 99 to 4. Sorry to interrupt you. But sorry to interrupt you. I'm saying we had a BJP government like from 99 to 2004. But that government also, the Vajpayee government also didn't change the discourse of the narrative. It still focused on the same narrative. It went about talking about development, but the society did not change much. The society had changed after 2014 when Narendra Modi came up with such a huge majority. So I think we have to accept that fact. We have to start living with that fact, like that this is gonna happen, whether we like it or not. That is a person. That can be a personal opinion.
Right.
Just because we are
I
not
mean,
allowed.
totally. I
Hmm.
agree with that. And actually,
Hmm.
the point that I was trying to make was ki, now, the discourse is shifting more and more towards the right. So,
Yes.
obviously, there will be some things that come in which are, too far on the right. But then,
Hmm.
a greater acceptance in the society has been created for this kind of right wing
Exactly.
discourse. And,
Exactly. Huh.
people are sort of more accepting of it. And
Hmm.
they think that it is more of what should happen, and sort of what was happening earlier was in some way a little bit of an injustice.
Exactly. Huh.
This is a new strain of thought which has been exposed, and of course we live in a democracy and there's freedom of expression, so there is nobody trying to question whether or not this movie should have been released. Maybe what we should try to censure is being too swayed by this movie. Like you both mentioned, it is just a movie. Let's just keep it there and try
Hmm.
not to get too emotional about it. And because the movie is such that it highlights the human suffering, so it has a way to inspire sort of an emotional response. But as aware citizens, it is sort of our duty to not let our emotions get in the way of our understanding of society. So yeah, we have had quite a long discussion on this. Maybe we can have one final thought from each of you guys. So maybe Saurabh first, then Panda, and we can close with you.
So there are two things I picked up from Dubey's point: the why there had been a BJP government before, but such drastic discourse did not. So the thing is, we have to. I'm going to reference a book by Sanjay Baru, an ex-IAS officer, India's new power elite. So the people already in power in Delhi had not invested in Narendra Modi the way they have invested in establishment before. Even LK Advani and Atal Bihari Vajpayee was part of that elite, and hence they were not changing much. But when Modi came, he brought in his own kind of people, and the establishment did not have the investment, so they went on and changed everything. So that's why you see such drastic changes in policy making as well as the deliverables on ground. The second thing I'm going to end with the point is that geometrically speaking, if you have to shift something from left towards center, you have to drag it towards the right. So even if that is happening, I guess that's part of the democratic discourse, and if some correction is going to happen, democracy will take care of it.
Right. And I would like to again highlight Dubey's point that in a democracy, that chaos and that turmoil is required, over time. And I think so that is what is the test of democracy. That is what strengthens it. So this can be such event. But again, finally, my view on this will only be this: that let's keep the movie part apart and the politics part apart. There have been multiple controversial movies around the world, and there have been few in India. But this politicization and basically highlighting of specific movies and then targeting, bringing that part to the current narrative, is something which is not very, which should not happen. As simple as that. So let's just enjoy movie as movie. Let's just be on our sides and let our brains, do the thinking and see what we have for. And let's not get into fights over unnecessary things that have been created by people that just want to take the maximum benefit out of such situation that has been created. That will be my final.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. Not much to add. I will just say that like we have to focus more on reconciliation part. Like we as Indians have ignored it completely. We never reconcile. We never talk about the like so many disastrous things that have happened post independence. We have a tendency to forget. That should not be happening. We should focus on reconciliation. And if we do that, then people will like what should I say, like people will be more aware. They will be more like passionate. They won't be like this passionate about these things when after a movie arrives. Okay, they will be more like they will be more reasonable of it. Why this thing is happening? Like because we tend to ignore atrocities in our society. Once we stop doing it, we focus on, we as a society, we as a state focus on reconciliation part of any atrocity which is committed, and we develop a tendency to ask for forgiveness in our society. These things like these ramifications or extreme ramifications are going to vanish, and like treat movie as a movie, enjoy, have fun. Like no, I don't think like with growing time, like I think this whatever the passion people have, it's going to die down, and it should come up to like the reconciliation part. Like the people who have really suffered, they should be getting justice in like due course of time.
All right. So enjoy movie as a
Mm,
movie, and justice
mm,
should be
mm.
served. Those are the messages of
Okay.
the day. And I think with that,
Mm,
we can move on to the next topic. We are at the 21-minute mark, and next we wanted to talk about the hijab controversy. So, Saurabh, you're most welcome to say, but we only talked about, the first topic. So, what do you want to do?
No, I really have to leave. Actually,
Okay.
I have something to do, and that's why. Thanks, guys. I'm really traveling right now. That's why I could not stay longer. But thanks for it. It was a fun conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Thank you
sir.
so much for your appearance, and
Thank you, Saurabh.
uh, see you later.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
All right. So that leaves just the three of us, and we can begin talking about the second topic. So, Panda, if you can put it in the chat,
Yeah.
we're going to talk about the hijab controversy. So, we have talked about this once before, and sort of had a debate on it, whether or not it is an essential, like it is an essential practice to Islam, or whether or not we should allow it. Since then, there has been, a very detailed verdict that has been released by the Karnataka High Court, and it was by a panel of three judges. So, we've had some context into this as well, and we're going to talk about it sort of in more detail, given the High Court judgment or the High Court verdict that has just come in. So, I will just lay down the context a little bit here. So there is in like judicial terms there is something called the principle of reasonable accommodation. So and it is usually used in the context of disability. So it is considered that it is a duty of the government and also of businesses or organizations in society to sort of do something extra for people who are disabled in order to accommodate them, or help them be a better part of the society. So this principle of reasonable accommodation is used to make some extra accommodation which are apart from what is offered to the normal public, to some special group of people who sort of require it to become a greater part of the society. Now, the court has taken a line that since wearing hijab is not an essential practice to practice Islam, or to be an effective citizen of the society, therefore this accommodation cannot be made. And in educational institutions, there should be no head covering, or a hijab, or whatever else, a saffron cloth that some other communities might like to wear, or maybe some other sort of head covering. All of those are not allowed because it is not reasonable to accommodate these. This is essentially in a line what the court has concluded. And there are a couple of articles of the Constitution that come in here. There is a little bit of Article 19, which gives us all the six freedoms, and there is Article 21, which is the right to life and liberty, and of course there's Article 25, which is freedom to profess, propagate, and practice your own religion. And what is also in this context is the UN Convention of Rights of People with Disabilities. So there they have given some examples of what could be a reasonable accommodation. Like it could be modifying the work schedule, or allowing certain assistive devices like a hearing aid, or some sort of walking aid, or it could be modification of the workplace in order to allow better access to disabled people. So sort of High Court has framed this debate in the context of reasonable accommodation, and has concluded that it is not reasonable to have this accommodation. So since Dubey is our guest today, so let's go to him first and sort of understand his take on this situation, and then we can come back to Panda and take his opinion.
Thank you for that. And so basically, you're saying like you talked about the reasonable accommodation, okay,
Mm-hmm.
in the society, so that you can push certain people who have been marginalized or who are not in the mainstream. They can be granted certain liberties apart from the main, like whatever is existing in the mainstream. So see, when we look into the court's verdict, basically what I think the court has made verdict on, and what I think it has missed out on, I'll mention it. The court has basically just pinned on one point, that whether hijab is an essential religious practice in Islam or not. Okay, and it has made a decision based on that. Like And it basically said that hijab, because hijab is not an essential religious practice, so like you cannot practice that. You cannot go with a hijab to an educational institute. That's what it says, and like you have to follow the guidelines of the education institution. That is the basic judgment, if I have to say, like in layman terms. In layman terms. So what I think about it, what court has missed out on it is that according to me, see, first of all, this if you want to elaborate on the essential religious practice clause, like what is basically an essential religious practice according to our Indian constitution, there's no mention of essential religious practice in the constitution. First of all, it is a device which has been it has been invented by the Supreme Court itself, like in the famous, if you guys know about the Shirur Mutt case, it was basically developed in that, and with due course of time, it has taken various forms. And like what court does is like according to, and again, being a student, being an aspirant, I disagree with the court on this point, that according to me, the judges should not be the one who should be sitting over there and deciding like what in particular religion is essential and what in particular religion is not essential. Like it's very, according to me, it's not a it's a very minuscule view, or according to what should I say, like it's not a very large, wide point of view which the judges are taking. They are like considering their own, and then they are deciding whether it's essential or not. So this case, according to me, should not have been decided on the point of essential religious practice. This case should have been decided on the point whether hijab can be part of dress code or not. Like whether do you consider hijab as a part of dress code, or you don't consider hijab as a part of dress code. It should not have been taken to a point whether court should decide like whether hijab is essential religious practice or not. Because even if court says from, like it has already said some 10 years back, that hijab is not essential to Islam, but still you see people wearing hijab. So the problem is not sorted out. You are just creating according to me, a confusion in the religious institution, in the minds of the student. That okay, you cannot go because the constitution is not allowing you hijab, so you cannot go in hijab, so you may even have to drop out. And there are cases where students have dropped out. So according to me, the court have taken a much nuanced stance on this issue, and they should have decided whether you can have hijab in your dress code or not, and made a decision according to it, rather than thinking on the fact that whether hijab is an essential. Because basically, I don't agree with the essentiality clause of the Supreme Court. That is my personal point of view. Like anyone can, maybe people may agree to Supreme Court, but on this point of view, I disagree with the Supreme Court. I think they are no one to decide what ritual or what practices are essential to a particular religion or not. I think they are not well versed enough to get into particular religion. They just have they decide on certain facts. There are multiple examples in past as well, whether they said that Tandav dance is not essential to Hinduism, or so many multiple things, like somewhere they said like Santhara in Jainism is not essential to Jains. That also has been said by the Supreme Court in some of its judgments. So I think this essentiality clause in itself, according to me, is very ambiguous, and the court should have taken a ground on the uniform part of it, whether like somebody can go with a hijab or any saffron dupatta or anything to a particular religious institution or not. By doing this, they could have avoided a religious controversy around it. What court did, they took a very narrow stance on it, and I hope once this thing goes into the Supreme Court, because Supreme Court has so many cases pending, there are so many cases pending in the Supreme Court on the religious line, which they are going to decide when they constitute the 9-judge bench. They have not done it yet. I don't know why they are avoiding it till now. They should do it. So once it get into the Supreme Court, I just feel like they take a different stance on it. I'm not, but like currently, I'm not satisfied with the stance that Supreme Court has taken. If I have to sum up it one line, like according to me, the judgment is incorrect. If I have to be very blatant, like I don't think
be careful of contempt of court.
Yeah, it's very common nowadays. But if I have to say that I'm not happy with the stance of the Supreme Court, because personally, like what I've read about the essentiality clause, I personally don't concur to it. The idea of essentiality, according to me, it's a false idea.
All right. So yeah, thank you for that. And Dubey believes that the court has made a grave mistake. Panda, what do you think?
I'll just focus around the religious essential practices as a whole. So what are essential practices and how this thing evolved? So Dubey has rightly mentioned that it evolved in the Shirur Mutt case, 1954. It goes as back. So what are essential practices is that the question had come up to court that there were certain religious practices that were, violative of other fundamental rights. So under the disguise of protecting Article 25 and 26, which is individual and collective religious freedom, they were also doing harm to Article 14, right to equality, in the Shirur Mutt case, opening up of temples for general public and women. And Sabrimala, we had already seen that. And then the text goes violating Article 19 and 21. There is this thing that hijab, not allowing wearing of hijab is something that will violate Article 19, that is expression, and 21, that is right to privacy. So this essential practices is an Indian innovation that started back in 1954. According to this, the religion can be divided into two areas. So one is the core essential area, which is very fundamental to the existence of religion, and then there is something that has been created around the core. And how this test is done is that if there is any practice that is determined by the Supreme Court using the sacred text. Now, what those sacred texts are again depends on the Supreme Court. Such as triple talaq was not a part of essential practices. So using those sacred texts, if anything is found to be essential practice, so then that section will be considered and the other section will be ignored, and vice versa, that if it is not part of the essential practices, is that. Now the problem with the essential tests practice as such is that it depends on the Supreme Court, or I would say a 3-judge bench, or a single judge bench, or a 3-judge bench. That is basically what has been done mostly, that to decide upon the case of the essentiality of a religious practice. For example, in this case of hijab, just a fun fact is that similar question was brought up in Kerala High Court back in 2016.
Kerala High Court,
That was,
and they had a very different text.
yeah, that was Amna bint Bashir versus CBSC, and they had declared that hijab is an essential practice. And now this question is again being brought up by in front of the Karnataka High Court, and this is something which they have said that it is not a part of essential practices. So again, this test that has been created, the essential practices test, is what I would say a part of judicial activism. That India had more likely begun to see after 1978 and 79, post-democracy phase, and this has only taken up. And I think so. This is for the very reason that Supreme Court is not delivering a judgment as of now. So there are different. We have a precedent from Kerala High Court. The same has been reversed by the Karnataka High Court. And for our public, all these high courts are constitutional courts. It is well in their rights to interpret the Constitution. But Supreme Court is the ultimate interpreter of Constitution. So this is how the principle of essentiality has developed. Now, when it comes to this hijab controversy, we had already had a discussion regarding, we could have talked about the education part. Dubey had mentioned that Tandav is not in part essential practice. It was given back in 2004 by the Supreme Court, owing to stating that, you cannot have a public Tandav. It was limited to specific community, having skulls in your head and then you performing the Tandav. So again, it violated Article 19 when we have certain restrictions, including the contempt of court that we were just discussing. So there was this public order, decency, or morality. That was the ground that was given by the Supreme Court back then. And again, referring to certain court texts, I don't know which court text. Now, similarly, the similar thing has happened in case of hijab. High Court had, owing to certain court text, upheld that it is an essential practice. Karnataka High Court, owing to another certain court texts, have referred that it is not a part of essential practice. So yes, the ultimate decision lies with the Supreme Court as of now. But what constitutes the essentiality part is still, very debatable, because for me, I might not agree or adhere to a certain religious text that it might be core for some section of, say, a religion, but it might not be core text. So I think in a democracy, these sort of issues, again tend to come up, where even violating right of a single individual is violation of democracy. So that is something that needs to be balanced by the Supreme Court, and this test of essentiality needs an overlook, is what I'm saying. That instead of judiciary interpreting, I think so a secular council is needed to be built. And again, it's a topic that can the essential practices can go on. So this is my take on the essential practice on this.
Yeah. So there are so many things, like so many different directions in which this debate can go. But I actually wanted to present maybe a counterpoint to what you guys are mentioning. So the general strain of thought that you have mentioned is that that court is nobody to decide what is essential, what is not. Even what they're basing their decision on, those core texts themselves, we're not really sure if they are really the core text, who interpreted these core texts.
Shubham, sorry to interrupt you. I never said that the court is no one to decide. Okay. I'm saying that this essentiality clause, what they have the innovation which they have come up with over the years. I don't agree with this essentiality thing. See, once fundamental rights or Article 19 or 21 is in question versus Article 25 or 25 or 26, what I personally feel is like Article 19 or 21 or 14 should always be like paramount when and it should never like come below Article 25 or 26. It should always be above Article like 25 and 26. Okay, so I'm not saying that the court should not be like interrupting or looking into the cases where they feel that the rights have been violated in the name of religious practice. Okay, they should be looking into the cases. They should be like passing judgments, but that they should be doing it on case-to-case basis, not make a proper like come up with something like an essentiality clause and say that okay, this practice is not essential. You can simply say that you cannot perform this thing in public. This particular thing comes under reasonable restriction or public order or morality or anything. Okay, so court can instead of making it a very like common thing or charter type of thing, I think essentiality clause is basically a charter that a court has developed over like 50 years. They should get rid of this charter and decide case by case. That is my only point. That's all.
Yeah. So, Dubey, I agree with what you're saying. Essentially, like you're arguing over the technical details over why sort of court has not allowed hijabs. They have made like a charter, and in the future, if the Supreme Court upholds it, then this might well become like a commonly accepted practice, and then India will sort of somehow lose some amount of religious freedom, or maybe some people's feelings might get hurt. Because they consider it as
basically an attack against the diversity. That's what I feel.
So hold on there. So we can perhaps get overprotective over the diversity. Now I don't even want to talk about this issue because it can get politicized. But maybe I'll talk about an issue which is closer to home for me, which is the trend where in a lot of in the North Indian Ganga belt or the Hindu region, there is a trend where females or married women have to keep a ghungat on their faces, right? And that is again a regressive practice. And actually, there are all these societies developing within the Hindu religion who are trying to stop it. Now, I'm not trying to compare these two, but what I'm trying to say is maybe we should appreciate the progressive strain when it comes to religious matters, because religion is sort of a medieval concept, and increasingly we are seeing that the nations which are more economically developed are sort of less regressive when it comes to religious practices, and this can actually be backed up by fact. So the point that I'm trying to make is maybe we should be more accepting of a progressive strain of thought when it comes to religion, and whatever are the regressive practices, and it doesn't really it is not limited to just one religion. It is among all the religions. Maybe our society is not ready for that kind of progressivism yet, but maybe we can start creating space for it. Is all I'm going to say. So. If you guys want to have any last points, we can have those, or we can move on to the next topic.
So basically, I completely agree with you that when you compare the economic condition of the countries who have basically done away with these practices, they are much higher than us. But we also need to understand the fact that India is very different from all those countries, considering the demography we have in our country. So we have to deal with these issues very differently from what they have done. We cannot follow conquer those lines. So the change which has to come, it has to come from the society rather than being imposed by some higher authority. So I feel I never believe in the fact that the society is not ready for it. We are always ready for a conversation. Okay, there should be a conversation in the society, and whenever the court feels that a genuine right, or maybe whether it's Article 14, 19, 20, or 21, it has been violated, it should immediately strike down any such religious practice. Okay, like Panda mentioned about Sabrimala. Okay, even in Sabrimala, I feel the court followed the route of activism, where they ignored very minute points about the Sabrimala temple. They did not go into those points, and they just took it as a matter of what should I say? They took it against as a topic of discrimination against women. But when you get into the Sabrimala issue and when you read it on a more elaborate basis, it's very different from it's not limited to the discrimination of women. There are so many temples in South where even men are not allowed. you have to understand the fact. There are so many temples in South India where even men are not allowed, or they are not allowed to visit those temples in a particular point of time. So temple, we have to very understand the fact that every religious place has certain connotations. But if you don't have such balanced approach, or when you tilt towards only towards activism part of it, or when you see is that it as discrimination, then you will come up with such like what should I say? We will end up having such polarized arguments like what we have today, whether it's religious versus right. I think the court needs to strike a very fine balance with it, and that is where I feel the essentiality thing fails. It doesn't strike a fine balance. It either says it's good or either says it's bad. You should not be having a categorization. That is my only apprehension with the court. They should get rid of the categorization and they should go case by case. If they do so, I think in future we'll be able to deal with these cases more efficiently. And we have to accept the fact that it's a very difficult thing to pass a judgment on because like religion is something which is very deep rooted in our society. So we have to accept it and like just get rid of the categorization. Have a balanced approach, which I feel is somewhere the Supreme Court is lacking in current discourse. Right. When it comes to religious issues, they are just lacking the balanced approach, according to me.
You know what? Again, restating my point is that religious is something that is very, very private. It varies individual to individual as to what I follow and what I do not follow. And the essentiality, again, deciding something on the basis of sacred texts might be okay, but that is how the texts have evolved. Over time, we had this early Vedic, and then we have this later Vedic, and there is a difference. So again, deciding. See, someone has to decide. Someone, and this decision is not for ending or someone's freedom. Basically, this decision is towards ending all this news, or I would say fighting that is going on the name of religion. I think so. That is why essential practices is necessary. But I'm very skeptical about the method of this essential practices test. But at the same time, the point that Vyas has mentioned that we need to move towards something that is more secularism and more progressive in society. Religious is something that, as a concept, is very private and personal. But overall, for the development of society, we need to look above religion. So that is something that the court should also say. And on this cultural, societal acceptance, and this is a quote or a line that I had read. So it says that law is an effective tool to bring social change. However, change in law without social acceptance can cause cultural lag. So law is necessary, and it is a very essential part. Let's just talk about homosexuality. So there is law that has triggered something to start acceptance. But till the time the acceptance is still not made, there is always going to remain a cultural act. There is always going to remain a section. So I think so. The similar things, and I think so. This is the second topic, and both controversial that we have discussed. But there is no end to this things that we are discussing. It's just that the society will accept these things is only when the society will itself progress. This is something that society itself will develop. So Supreme Court or any other matter is just providing a guiding light, and the guiding light is not necessarily correct, is what I'm saying. It can it is very dependent on the nature of judgment and something. So that is. So I don't want to dwell more into that.
All right. So I think with that we can end this topic. And an apple only falls from the tree when it's ready to fall. And in the same way, a society only moves on when it's ready to move on. So all we can do is maybe talk about it, and we've already done that. So the next topic that I wanted to talk about is something called the Export Preparedness Index. And we have about 15 minutes left. So maybe we can close with this, or if Panda has something towards the end, we can have that as well. So, and I hope, Dubey, you have some time to finish this call with us, right?
Okay. Yeah. I'm okay with it.
Okay, awesome. So, we will be closing in another 15 minutes or so. So, Export Preparedness Index, Niti Aayog has come out with it for second year in the running. And, Gujarat has topped the index as might have been expected. There are 4 main pillars, and there are 11 sub-pillars of the index. I won't go into the sub-pillars, but the 4 main pillars are policy, business ecosystem, export ecosystem, and export performance. So these are so out of these, only export performance is a metric which can be calculated based on facts on the ground. All the other 3 are sort of rated by a bureaucrat sitting in some office, which are their policy readiness or their business ecosystem or their export ecosystem. Now, as Niti Aayog often does, they have divided all the states or all the regions of India into 4 different categories. These categories are Himalayan, coastal, landlocked, and UT/city states. So even Jammu Kashmir is part of the city-state category. And in the Himalayan category, Uttarakhand, Himachal Pradesh, and Tripura. These are the 1, 2, 3. In the coastal, it's Gujarat, Maharashtra, and then Karnataka. In the landlocked category, it's Haryana, UP, and then MP. And then in the UT/city category, it's Delhi, then Goa, then Jammu Kashmir. So again, exports, why are they important? Why are we talking about them now? Because between April 2020 and April 2021, so in these 2 months, if we look at the total exports from India, they have gone up 3x. So we exported $10 billion worth of merchandise. I'm talking about goods, not service exports. So we exported $10 billion of merchandise in April 2020, whereas in April 2021, it had gone up to $30 billion. So it had tripled. And our highest, monthly export has come in just December 2021, which was, three months back. So, but there has been a concerted effort into growing India's export share. And, India does really well in pharmaceuticals, in textiles, in agri products, when it comes to exports. These are sort of the sectors that the government has increasingly focused on also. So what I wanted to talk about was, sort of what are the steps that we can take to further increase our export potential, and B, what are some of the challenges when it comes to export. So maybe we can go to Panda first and then come to Dubey, just to give it more time to formulate. And I have a few challenges written down, but I'll come back to these once we're done. So Panda, all yours.
Right. Before starting with the challenges, I would like to say why this index or any index in India is basically, when it is prepared, So, for example, this export preparedness index will have few benefits. First one is increasing competition amongst the state, right? And this is the most important benefit of any index. So, if you know where you lie and the 4 areas that have been mentioned, if you know where your state individual ranking is, so you can have necessary improvement in those specific areas. That is something that is very essential when it comes to any index. And now let's just focus on export preparedness index. Second thing, apart from this, is that it also acts as a guide to the state government, and also recognizes the obstacles that comes in increasing the export of the nation. Because export is something, again, when it comes to balance of payments, export is something that is very necessary, because it helps us to pay back for what we are importing, such as oil, because India is a major importer of oil. And the next part is that we have seen, and again, this index also highlights that this export region has been mainly focused in few states, and these are mainly the wealthy states that have come. We have Gujarat, we have few South Indian states, Maharashtra, Andhra. So this is something that it highlights the potential of the regions that are not covered in this index to come and contribute to this index. Now, when it comes to the challenges regarding the export, COVID was one. I think so. We have come over it in a beautiful way. The fact states that we have 3 times the export. Other challenges is that major challenge for me personally is this providing the connect. Logistics is the correct word for that. So India still, the spending on logistics in India accounts for 14% of its GDP, while the world average is somewhere around 8%, 8 to 9%. So we have to drastically reduce this extra spending on logistics. We have to create effective passage and effective logistics to transport the goods. That is the first thing. The second thing is research and development and infrastructure in states is missing. We don't have proper processing industries that can contribute and convert those raw products into something more meaningful, which is more likely to be exported and also increase the shelf life. So these two are something that I immediately can think of.
Okay. So, like, I'd just like to add on certain points, like what Panda has already mentioned. See, first of all, I think there has been like a very historical apprehension when we come to exports. Like, we haven't focused on this this part of our economy for a very long time. We still were stuck in that agrarian mindset, so we didn't focus on manufacturing, and so that's the reason our export has also suffered a lot. So what I feel is that if we want to increase our exports, first of all, I feel that the what government should immediately do is get rid of the powers, like as much as they can. They have to take the powers from the hands of the bureaucrats. As long as bureaucrats remain powerful, or there is still retipism in our bureaucracy, our exports are not going to flourish. So first of all, we need to decrease the retipism in the bureaucracy, and secondly, what we are still not again, it comes from the manufacturing sector itself. Like we have still not we have not been able to find out the what should I say? We have to tap in the local economies, or what should I say? We still don't know what is the strength of each and every locality or every district in a particular state. We still don't know it. Like what is the every district has a USP. You must be knowing that your district also must be having a particular product which has the ability to go so that it can be scaled globally. So that is also one of the factors which is very important. We need to discover that. We need to find out what are the products from each and every place which can be scaled, which can be a potential export. And then secondly, we need to take the power from the hand of the bureaucrats. One, if we don't do that, our manufacturing sector is not going to develop. We are not going to manufacture, and if we don't manufacture, we are not going to export. And Panda has already covered the logistic parts where we are lacking. We are still short on roads. The turnaround time of our ships are still they are not up to the global standards. They are still very less. So these are the two things we need to improve on. I think, and we have worked upon it in past few years. These things have been improving with due course of time. So, but I think that if we don't focus on the manufacturing part, then our merchandise is going to suffer. So until unless Make in India is implemented into true spirits, you will have to be satisfied with this number of exports. It's not going to increase drastically. First, implement Make in India on ground level, and then we can talk about exports rising exponentially. So that is my take on it.
So I mean there are a couple of things that I would like to mention here. So first, on the infrastructure or the lack of infrastructure part. So just to give you a sense of the the kind of infrastructure that we have in India, if you take the sum of the total port capacity of India's all the ports, combine them all together, it is 1/3 of the port capacity of Shanghai alone. So basically, India has very poor port capacity, and there are certain size of ships that cannot come into India. So for example, if you have to export something from India to the western coast of US, right? It can only be transferred in a big ship. So those Indian goods are first shipped in a small ship to Singapore, and then in Singapore they're reassembled into these big container ships, and then they are shipped across the Pacific Ocean. So essentially, there is this huge lack of infrastructure. And some of that also goes back to what Dubey was mentioning, that there was a lack of, this growth mindset, and we were also into this self-sufficiency or this Gandhian ideology of village manufacturing, and we'll only do what we need, and sort of we avoided prosperity and also our socialist instincts up until 1991 had a lot to do with it as well. So of course there are historical reasons for lack of infrastructure, but now the time has come that we need to switch that, because if you look at India's demographic situation, India is going to have a lot of cheap labor, and if we cannot find a place to employ that cheap labor, it is going to turn into a demographic disaster. And for that, basically merchandise manufacturing and merchandise export is essentially the key sector. You can only employ so many people in service sector. You have to have that manufacturing capacity based out of India. You have to have low turnaround times on your port. You have to have big ports. You have to have good roads. Ease of doing business should be higher. So all of these points need a lot of concerted effort over the next 10-15 years. If we are going to employ everyone, so there are a million people joining the Indian workforce every day. In no country in the world at any given point of time has so many people come into the workforce at any given time. So the need is to create labor intensive jobs, and there is nothing more labor intensive than manufacturing goods. So this is going to be the pathway for us to get to middle income, for us to get to $10,000 per capita. And we have to really focus on exports. So this export preparedness index, it's an excellent index and as Panda was mentioning, it promotes competition between the states. So we need more such steps, and of course the lack of infrastructure is totally visible. No matter where you look, and it affects us in manufacturing most of all. So one more thing that I just wanted to mention on while closing was the wild geese flying model, where essentially as these countries hit their demographic dividend, that's when manufacturing capacity shifted in to those countries. So this happened in Japan first, China, then Korea, then Southeast Asian countries like Vietnam and so on. Then it's sort of happening now in Bangladesh and India. So essentially now is the time when the tailwinds are there for us to really establish our export capacity to enhance our manufacturing capacity, because people want to diversify their supply chains. China is sort of not a reliable partner. India sort of sits as a much better place diplomatically as a partner where people can diversify their supply chains. So if we have all the basics in place, that's only when we can attract all these international supply chains into our country. So those would be my points, and I think we have had quite a bit of discussion on this. But if there are any closing points before we close, yeah, Panda.
Yeah, just for our viewers, the thing that you're talking about is the flying geese model. So as presently India and Bangladesh are in that state or stage of their economy that the manufacturing products is relatively, the assemblage and manufacturing of products relatively is very cheaper when it is compared with countries like China and Japan. And this is something that India should take advantage of. Aside from this Make in India, we also had this campaign of Assemble in India. We have had Apple stores opening up in Indian cities. So I think this is that is definitely going to boost our export. Second thing, and this is a very famous quote, and this is regarding any index. We have our own set of apprehensions regarding the methodology, but I think so. What gets measured gets done. So now this is a step in a correct direction, just to regarding the measurement. Now the states know their individual weakness, and now they can get it done. In enhancing these export areas, the weak lacunae that they have. And then we have this beautiful point by Dubey that every region has its own USP and monopoly, which needs to be exploited. And I think so this index will rightly set up that environment that such type of factors regarding region specific monopolies can be exploited.
So I would just like to add on two things. When we say that we need to he mentioned about competitive federalism as well, Panda also mentioned about it, that the indices create that competition among the states. But see, why we have to understand that why certain states are way ahead of us. First of all, some states were historically rich, like Gujarat and Maharashtra, they had more resources when you compare it to the Hindi belt. But what I also feel there are two things also which we need to very much focus upon if we want to boost our manufacturing. The first thing is labor. Okay, so when labor, we need to directly link, when it comes to labor, we link it directly to the labor laws. Okay, I still believe that labor laws in India are very archaic. They are not up to the global standards. We are still living in those socialist eras where we have not come into the capitalist mindset of the labor laws. So first of all, we need to improve our labor laws drastically. In 2019-20, I don't exactly remember, they came up with labor codes. But they came up with labor codes, but I still believe that labor codes are not up to the up to the mark. They are still not up to the global standards where they should be. And the second thing is land acquisition. Our land acquisition policies are terribly poor. I'm telling you. We have not been able, whenever it comes to manufacturing or whenever it comes to giving that security to the investors, that once you come to our state, we will give you land at cheaper rates. We will give you electricity at cheaper rates. We will provide you labor at cheaper rates. Once we give these three parameters to any particular manufacturer or investor, then he is surely going to come to your state. In India, we are not able to deliver these three basic parameters. That is land. The second thing is labor, and the third thing is water and electricity. And then obviously a proper political environment, a stable political environment. I think we are lacking on these 3-4 very basic points. If we are able to achieve these 3-4 basic points, then I'm very confident about the fact that we will be able to reap this demographic dividend. But somewhere we are lacking on that political willingness is lacking. We just need to sort out our land and labor issue, and if we are able to do that, and then I think sky is the limit for India, because the population is so huge, and like if there is a country like which has 50 to 60% of their population between 80 to 30 years of age, then now is the time we utilize this population. I don't know why we're not doing it.
Right, exactly, and I think that is a great place to close this episode. Sky is the limit for in India's growing potential, and the labor laws and the land acquisition laws are what is holding us back. So let's get those fixed as soon as we can, and thank you so much to all the viewers who sort of tuned in live, and the ones who are going to watch us later across all the different platforms. We're going to put this podcast in audio form in Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts as well, and it will eventually go up on YouTube when the editing is done. Also, do remember to subscribe and follow us and like and comment on our content. And as always, thank you so much to Panda for showing up and sharing his insights, and to Dubey as well for his brilliant comments on all the topics that we had today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Thank you, Vyas. Thank you, Saurabh and Saurabh.
Thank you, Shubham. Thank you, Shubham. Thank you, Panda.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Episode 60 in the books. Take care, guys. See you next week. Bye.
Bye.